Alright staff, thank you for joining us once again, where today we're having an odyssey of ventures down the rabbit hole of Mr. Vegan Soft on here, who is just an absolute inane buffoon. Everything that comes out of this ridiculous boy's mouth is utterly, completely ridiculous, including everything in this video. What a shock. Let's deal with this one, shall we? This one he's entitled Top 9 Dangers of Animal Products. Great. Let's hear what those are, and we'll put him right where he's wrong. Spoiler, boys and girls, that'll be fucking everywhere. Let's go.
And is that meat causes kidney stones?
No, it doesn't. False. Show me an experimental piece of evidence that supports that claim in any way, shape or form. None exists. Wrong.
Gallstones?
No, same deal. Wrong.
And gallstones cause a range of health problems?
Fine, but meat doesn't cause gallstones, idiot.
Basically by blocking off regular function to areas of your liver and gallbladder. And kidney stones, it's a complicated issue, but it basically...
Kidney stones are almost entirely calcium oxalate. Oxalate, son, you get from plants. Okay? You don't even understand that, do you? What's next?
Most kidney stones come from calcium building up in your kidneys, which is...
calcium oxalate. So you don't even understand that, do you? Calcium oxalate is a kidney stone, and that comes from plants, mostly.
Is basically the effect of eating meat.
No, completely wrong. Absolutely, utterly comical. Laughable.
So, a very painful condition, kidneys?
Yes, it is. And it's caused by calcium oxalate, which you get from eating plants, mostly. Good.
Stones can also lead to gout, and that is...
No, kidney stones don't lead to gout. They are completely unrelated conditions. Gout is an inflammatory disorder.
What I will argue is one of the big problems with animal products.
Well, you'd be wrong, because you've just said a bunch of ridiculous, nonsensical garbage to start your video. I wonder whether it will continue along the same lines, in the same vein, boys and girls. I suspect so. I haven't actually watched this through. Vote below. Make your comment underneath the video and let us know whether you think Mr. Vegan Noodlehead here is going to get any better.
All right. Number 8 is parasites and also harmful bacteria. So
okay, so neither parasites nor bacteria exist in plant-based pseudo-food like slop, do they not? Also, that's why we have very, very low stomach acidity, buffoon. That's what it's for. Okay, that, and also it's very, very effective at breaking down fat and protein. Okay. What you'll find is plant material breaks down much more readily in alkaline conditions. Another clear indicator of what we should be eating and what we shouldn't. Okay, what is next?
So you've got a range of different parasites that can go from animal host into a human host.
Yeah, and the same is true of parasites and various other problems that you can derive by eating plants. What's your point?
And those can harm you in a number of ways. They can cause you to have strange food cravings, specifically sugar that the parasite benefits from that you don't necessarily benefit from.
Ah, so you understand that sugar is bad, do you? In that case, Mr. Vegan Buffhead, why do you promote a plant-based diet? Because the carbohydrates that do break down in our systems at all break down almost entirely to, oh yes, sugar. Whoops. Dear oh dear. Dear oh dear oh dear. The rest, the stuff that we derive from breaking down a very, very small amount of fibre under the influence of some bacteria in our colons, that's almost entirely saturated short-chain fatty acids. Hello, Randall Cycle. Perhaps you should watch my channel and you might learn about some science. Okay, what's next?
Not only taking food away from you by consuming it themselves, but also converting it into toxic waste. And then harmful bacteria can include things like food poisoning, like
Yeah, so no one's ever been food poisoned by a bacterial infection derived from plants, have they not? Perhaps you should look. Just do a basic search for 5 seconds before you make your ridiculous videos, son, and you'll see what the most common sources of food poisoning are. And that's not meat. Okay, just spoil it. Just go and have a look, and you'll see that for yourself. Okay, even Dr. Google understands this.
salmonella, which is very common, Campylobacter, the number one cause of gastroesophageal intestinal disease. Like thousands of people go to hospital and some people die from these every year.
Yes. And most of them got infected by eating plant material. Whoops, again, never mind though, with the facts and stuff.
So that's a significant problem.
With food, and food like slop. Tell you what though, your chances of such a problem are vastly lower if you eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet that doesn't interfere with your capacity and ability to keep your stomach acid at the low range that it ought to be, sort of 1.5 or so. Think of that? No, because you actually didn't think at all about anything ever in your life. That takes more than one brain cell. I'm amazed you don't forget to breathe and die, son. It's incredible.
And then you've also got the microbiome in your stomach and large intestine, which...
Microbiome in your stomach, you say? Okay.
Rely on a healthy balance of bacteria, and by eating meat you're actually bringing in harmful bacteria.
False. Complete nonsense. Fantasy. Shit that you just made up to suit your ideology. Show me some evidence for that ridiculous claim. We won't wait because it doesn't exist. What's next?
That are going to sort of, outcompete the good bacteria if you eat.
Okay, so what's good bacteria and what's bad bacteria, and what evidence do you base that claim on, given that you've provided absolutely no evidence for the claim before this one and wouldn't be able to back up the claim you've just made either, in any way? No data exists on this topic that would be informative. If good means likely even to be associated even with better health outcomes over any period of time in a human population kept otherwise under control in some way, i.e. an experiment. Science. No? Okay, good.
We meat on a regular basis. And there's a whole range of health issues tied to that, but basically that's...
Tied to what?
The point is that you're bringing in harmful bacteria by eating...
No, wrong. False.
Meat.
Still.
Number 7 is sort of 3 different things. So you've got heavy metal contamination.
Yeah, that also exists in the environment. That's an environmental toxin. It's an environmental problem.
Microplastic contamination and...
Yeah, same deal. Environmental.
Other industrial toxins.
Yeah, we can't avoid the environment that we've placed ourselves in. We are a despicable species that has polluted our planet vastly and hugely over the last several hundred years, and we're paying the price for that in many ways, such as heavy metals and plastics.
So in terms of heavy metals, we often think of fish having mercury. It's really common.
Yes, that's right, it is.
Tuna has really high mercury in it.
Yes, it does, that's right.
But then also something that...
That's why you shouldn't base your diet around tuna. Pretty straightforward, really, isn't it?
People don't know is that salmon has really high arsenic content.
That's why you shouldn't base your diet on arsenic either, or salmon, I should say, either. Goodness. Maybe the stupid's rubbing off. I hope not.
And then other fish also have a lot of lead, which lead is a really significant one because lead actually can damage every organ system in the body.
Correct. That's why you shouldn't base your diet around seafood of any kind. Grass-fed ruminants is where our ancestral gift is, where our biological design pattern comes from. That's what we should base our diets on. Straightforward, really.
which is obviously really bad. And
Unless, of course, you're an Inuit.
lead poisoning can kill you. And lead's pretty widespread.
So can many toxins found in plants, but you're not mentioning that. And lead is one of those too, because lead can also be found in plants.
As well, like we know it's in chicken. It gets stored in animals' bones, so if you consume bone broth, you're likely getting lead poisoning.
Depends where you got your bones from.
And yeah, it's very widespread throughout various meats.
Okay, so do you have any empirical evidence that backs up that claim? And further to that, do you have any prevalence data on bona fide identified cases of lead poisoning as that relates to any aspect of human nutrition over any period of time? No? Again, that's what I thought. Shall we move on then?
As well. Microplastic, it's mainly a problem with fish because there's microscopic particles of plastic in the ocean. Just other industrial contaminants like DDT, PCB.
DDT? What's that used for? Oh, yes. Boy, you've got no idea, have you? No idea at all on any topic whatsoever, clearly.
Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons.
What about them? What about them?
I don't know if we said dioxins.
Dioxins don't exist in anything but meat, do they not? Wrong again.
Say organotins. Number 6, depression and anxiety. Basically the idea that you're putting in animal hormones into your body, setting up your brain for less than.
That's right, that's an idea. Do you have any proof that it is so? Can you point to a single experiment that underpins your ridiculous theological belief structure in this area? No? Again? Good.
An optimal function, which can lead you to a range of mental issues, including depression.
Yeah, I tell you what though, you know, when you look at the mental function of people who identify as vegan, we can see in general some really patent, really obvious problems that these individuals clearly have with their cognitive function, with cognitive dissonance, being divorced from reality in just about every conceivable way possible. We hear mindless ideology espoused without let or hindrance on a repeat basis, irrespective of how many times this ridiculous excremental pustulous nonsense is completely and utterly debunked by competent scientific thinking people. It's amazing. And if you look at the prevalence of depression and anxiety and all forms of mental health issues, you will find information that you won't like with regard to the generalized dietary makeup associated with those disease processes. Okay? What you will also find if you do a survey of people who identify as carnivore and have been for more than 6 months, that in fact mental health issues seem to dissolve away. They seem to be completely ameliorated by the cessation of the self-poisoning that is induced when you take in food like slop, which is not appropriate foodstuffs for a human being. Shame about those facts again, though. What's next?
And anxiety, which I feel are very significant. Also, the more meat you eat, the less healthy plant foods you.
Healthy plant foods? There's no such thing. What are you talking about? That's an ideology. That's a propaganda spin line. That's nothing to do with reality or science or facts of any kind. Healthy plant foods. No.
you will be eating, which if you...
Are you asking a question or making a statement here? Why has everything got upward inflection on it? Is it because actually you're so vastly, hugely lacking in competence and confidence? Maybe? I don't know.
I've studied nutrition in plant foods. There's a wide range of nutrients that...
You haven't studied anything, son. Clearly. What you've done is you've sucked down a bunch of ideology and propaganda in a brainless and mindless fashion without even considering for a second that what you've been reading is absolute garbage from top to bottom. And when you're challenged to actually deal with the objective reality in which you find yourself in a scientific fashion, you fall flat on your face every single time because you are singly lacking in the background, skills, knowledge and common sense to be able to do so. Your Dunning-Kruger is beyond belief, your arrogance is stunning, and it is only superseded by the depth of your ineptitude. Incredible.
Really, really good for your brain. So I would argue that you should only eat plant foods, get the most of them that you can possibly get.
Well, that's absolutely inane. That is moronic. That flies in the face of 4.5 million years of evolution. And it's anecdotally absolutely clear, as I have already outlined, that mental health problems are vastly, hugely associated with inappropriate diets, those containing large amounts of plant material and an insufficiency of actual food, animal products. Okay?
Okay, so let's go. Number 5 is type 2 diabetes, 1.3.
Yes, type 2 diabetes, which, by the way, is a disease characterized by what again? Oh, yes. Elevated blood glucose. What causes elevated blood glucose? Oh, yes, the pouring into your system of contraindicated and unnecessary carbohydrates, which are found in what again, by the way, in large amounts? Oh, yes, that's right. It's plants again. Dear oh dear.
3 million deaths in 2017 alone.
Yes, diabetes is a terrible disease. It's caused by the intake of too much carbohydrate, which is found in plants. Buffoon.
Were from type 2 diabetes, very widespread. And I will argue that the cause of most type 2 diabetes...
A cause. You're going to be wrong. Whatever you say next, it doesn't matter because there are no experiments to underpin that.
...is the consumption of animal products.
Why? Why would you argue that the consumption of animal products, the very thing that does not raise the blood sugar particularly, would be the cause of a disease characterized by raised blood sugar? That's some good logicking there, isn't it, boys and girls? Wow.
Which may be contrary to what a lot of people believe.
It's because it's contrary to facts, objective reality, common sense, science, and everything we know about everything. It's ridiculous. It's laughable beyond belief. As are you silly little boy.
A lot of people associate type 2 diabetes with sugar and processed food.
I wonder why. Because diabetes is elevated blood sugar. So non-food like slop substances that raise the blood sugar would seem to be contraindicated. Wouldn't they? Yes, good. And that means carbohydrates, all of them.
But I will argue that actually processed like sugars, for example, exacerbate type 2 diabetes. But
is that a question or is it a statement? It sounds like a question again. And yes, it's true, but also it's just as true that complex carbohydrates have the exact same result. Facts again. Sorry about those.
Actually, the underlying cause is saturated fat.
No, it isn't. There is no evidence to support that claim extant anywhere in the literature. None at all.
From animal products.
Wrong. False. Nonsense.
Number 4 is pandemics and other viruses. So like,
Oh, God. This boy really doesn't have the first clue about anything at all, does he?
nearly every pandemic in history can be traced back to animal agriculture and the way we raise livestock to feed large populations.
Folks, again, the way we raise food, so-called, to feed large populations is not largely animal agriculture based at all, is it? It should be, but it isn't. So you don't even know what you're going to say next, or even what you've just said, do you? Complete inability to hold a cogent thought for more than a few seconds, or indeed, apparently, at all, even for a microsecond. Just incredible. By which I mean lacking in credibility, absolutely lacking in credibility.
Yeah, even outside of viruses with pandemic potential, there's viruses in meat that can cause, for example, cancer. People who handle...
Oh, God. The pH of the stomach is 1.5 if you eat a species-appropriate, species-specific diet and don't interfere with that. You have an immune system which functions optimally when you don't drag that immune system down by poisoning yourself with non-food-like plant-based slop and toxins that drag said immune system down. Buffoon. Carnivores enjoy the rudest, most robust health of their lives. This is almost invariably reported as such. There are a bunch of people who did it wrong, who have less than positive experience, but there are not very many of those. As opposed to what you find in the vegan community, which is that 84% of everyone who ever tries that ridiculous theology and lifestyle quits it. They do that within 5 years, and 90% of those people cite catastrophic health failure as their reason for so doing. Such health failure is born of the destitution of nutrient to be found in plant materials, because we are not designed by natural selection to get our nutrition from plants. We are designed to get it from eating the flesh and fat of mostly large ruminant animals, grass-fed, if you can afford it and you can get it. Thanks.
meat as part of their job have a much higher cancer rate than the general public.
So, there are all sorts of confounding degrees of freedom there. Healthy user bias, unhealthy user bias, socioeconomic status, geographical location, working hours, artificial light, all sorts. Buffoon.
And, there's just, you never know how someone's going to react to a virus. So, yeah.
Correct. So what's your point? No point, as usual. Okay.
Spread the flu virus. For example, all flu viruses come from birds, which...
Nonsense.
So the annual flu is basically directly connected to the fact that we farm chicken.
Nonsense. Absolute, utter, arrant pap. Pustulous, excremental, nonsensical rubbish. False.
Number 3 biggest danger of meat is brain diseases. So
says this guy. Righto. Goodo. Tell us why that's so.
There's a spectrum of brain diseases, and on top of what I was saying about anxiety...
Twitch, brain diseases, twitch.
And depression.
Is it a question? Upward inflection? Don't know.
The cholesterol that's in meat.
Cholesterol, good. We've covered that one. I don't know how many times on my Fine channel already. Cholesterol is not associated with deleterious health outcome of any kind. Sorry about that. Facts again. Not even associated, let alone causally. Increased cholesterol is associated with decreased mortality from all causes and from every subcause as well. Here's the chart here. Hundreds of millions and probably billions of data points are covered here. Data from 168 countries collected by the World Health Organization and the British Heart Foundation. Sorry about that with the facts again. Shall we move on?
Blocks off blood flow to your brain?
No, it doesn't. Cholesterol doesn't block off anything to anything. That is the most ridiculous thing I've heard in weeks. I'd laugh, but it's not funny, son. It's just pathetic. It's sad that you think yourself remotely competent to speak to the public about any aspect of science, health, nutrition, or anything remotely connected to those areas. This is beyond a joke.
And over different spans of time can have worse and worse repercussions. So, for example...
None at all. There are no evidences of negative repercussions to having more cholesterol in your blood rather than less. The inference such that it exists, well, let's look at it again. Here it is, suggests that the inverse is true. Okay, what's next?
Over just a 2-week period of eating lots of meat, you start to see in tests you actually have worse memory, worse ability to learn new...
Change anybody's diet markedly, suddenly, overnight, and in the first couple of weeks there is going to be a problem in their physiological function, precisely because you have upset the balance of what the microbiome is expecting, and as such they will cause havoc. There's no surprise there. Ridiculous straw man. What is next?
Things worth attention and focus, and then...
Is it a question?
And fast forward to like eating meat for decades, you can...
Well, okay, show me a study where they kept people under reasonable control and observation at all for decades. No? Well then, looks like we're done with this next thing, whatever it is you're going to say, because you are now projecting forward in a totally unscientific and inappropriate fashion in a way that you cannot support with data in any way, shape or form. Shall we move on then?
Start to be at risk of dementia.
No, risk. Risk is a cause and effect statement. Show me the experiment. It doesn't exist. No, son.
And Alzheimer's, which is like your brain can't do very basic things.
Alzheimer's is a form of diabetes, it is thought these days, which again, by the way, is a result of too much sugar, not too much fat. Okay, what's next?
Like recognize a family member.
Is that a question?
And then at the extreme end, you've got stroke where you can just die instantly or have a permanent disability from.
Yes. You know what else can cause permanent disabilities? Failing to adhere to a species-appropriate diet and supplying your body with the nutrient that it vastly, grossly, obviously, patently needs in order to function remotely well.
From having a stroke, which is, again...
I think somebody here is having a tremendous stroke. I really do.
Tied to cholesterol.
No, it isn't. Wrong again.
Blocking off blood flow into the brain.
No, wrong. Absolute nonsense. Cholesterol does not block blood flow to anywhere, let alone to the brain. Ridiculous. Your brain consists of more than 60% cholesterol. Did you know that, son? No, I bet you didn't. Okay, what's next?
Number 2, biggest danger of meat is cancer.
No, it isn't. There is no evidence to support that claim existing anywhere in the literature. Absolutely ridiculous. Nonsense. Rubbish. We're done with that one. What's next?
There's a lot of different cancers, but...
Yes, and none of them are shown to be caused by anything in the dietary area. There are no experiments on cancer in human beings as it relates to any aspect of human nutrition. None at all. To infer cause and effect, which you've just done, you require an experiment. You can't get ethics for such a thing. It's impractical to do. It's impossible to achieve financially anyway. It does not exist. You are making up shit to suit an ideology. Stop it.
As I'll argue, many types of cancer are directly caused by meat.
No, they're not. Wrong. Absolute garbage. Show me some evidence. You said caused. Show me an experiment on human beings. It does not exist.
Processed meat causes cancer.
No, wrong again. Same argument, exactly.
The classification of processed meat is a type 1 carcinogen, which means we have...
So, all sorts of things are falsely classified by all sorts of self-claimed authorities. Doesn't make it right. Is that classification underpinned by an experimental data set? No, it isn't. It is an ideology. It is an opinion. Where do opinions sit on your treasured hierarchy that you love so much, by the way, son? Right down the bottom. Okay, shall we move on? It's really easy to debunk this idiot, isn't it? He thinks, for some reason, that he knows more about science than I do, when it's absolutely clear and patent that I've been your senior scientist for more years than this boy's been on the planet. Wow. Just incredible, the level of arrogance in Dunning-Kruger here, isn't it?
Have just as much evidence that processed meat causes cancer as...
No, there is no evidence for that. You just said cause again. There is no evidence to support a cause and effect relationship between anything nutrition-wise and any health outcome of any kind, actually, over any period of time in human beings whatsoever. There are no experiments to underpin that. Wrong. Lie. Propaganda. Spin doctory. Nonsense. Incompetent garbage from a boy.
We do that cigarettes and...
Cigarettes have got nothing whatsoever to do with nutrition. It is not an apt analogy, is what I'm trying to say. The incidence of lung cancer in smoking populations is 11,500% more per pack year of smoking than baseline. No smoking. Show me any epidemiological nutrition study that shows an increase of anything like that kind of magnitude, and I might be interested to see whether or not an experiment needs to be done to establish such a cause and effect proposal. No such epidemiological study with anything remotely like that kind of outcome statistic exists. It's ridiculous. It's pathetic. What's next?
Plutonium causes cancer. So
yes, plutonium and cigarette smoking, both associated with vastly increased incidence, hugely increased incidence. No aspect of nutrition can say the same. All the outcome statistics reported in nutritional epidemiology are so close to zero as makes no odds to any one given living human being over a 100-year life span. Signal to noise ratio. They are worthless. What is next?
That's really a big one, processed meat, but also there's a lot of ways that non-processed meat causes cancer as well.
No, there aren't. Wrong. False.
Well, which we can get into.
Well, get into it then. Because I'm a professor of health science for more than a quarter of a century, specialising in, among other subjects, human nutrition. And you clearly know more about this than I do somehow, which you could get into, but you're not doing for some reason. I wonder why that is. I actually don't wonder why that is. I know full well why it is. It's because you're making shit up. What's next?
And then number one biggest danger of animal products is heart disease.
No, it isn't. False. No evidence supports that claim whatsoever. Same argument I've made previously about every other cause and effect claim made by this ridiculous child. No, son.
Heart disease is the biggest disease in the world, and
yes,
I will argue that it's completely avoidable no
Yes, it is. You're right.
one needs to get heart disease, or virtually no one needs to get heart disease.
Correct.
And on a whole food plant-based diet, you can radically cut all the risk factors.
False. No, you can't. Simply because most people cannot sustain such a vastly, grossly nutrition deficient diet. Most people who try, 84%, quit within 5 years, and it's because of catastrophic health failure born of nutrient deficiency. Attempting to adhere yourself to this ridiculous theology is demonstrably associated with a huge, huge degree of self-destruction of people trying to do that. It destroys people's lives, it destroys people's health, sometimes permanently. It's disgraceful that anyone would push this theologically based claptrap onto people and sit there and make statements as ridiculous as this ridiculous person here has made in this video without the first scrap of evidence to support any of it, and be lauded by ridiculous buffoons in his echo chamber, consisting, by the way, at this time of 25 subscribers. 25. No, son. Just no.
Which, namely, is cholesterol blocking off blood flow
No, we've covered that. No, that's not what happens. False.
into your heart.
No. Absolute nonsense.
But there's a number of other things in meat that also contribute to heart disease risk.
No, there aren't. False again.
And yeah,
No. Still.
what was it? 40,000 plus people in Australia die every year from heart disease.
Yes, but none of those are causally traceable to the consumption of meat or animal fat or animal products in any way. None of them.
And in America, it's over 600,000 every
Same deal. And is that a question or a statement?
year. And it just seems to me like this is the biggest problem with animal products. That
Well, why? You haven't supplied any reason for us to believe that it's so. You've just said cholesterol blocks off arteries. Well, no, it doesn't, son. One of us is a cardiovascular pathophysiologist and professor of health science specialising in, among other things, cardiovascular pathophysiology. The other one of us is you, son. Which one of us is more likely to be credible in this regard? Doesn't really matter, though. I mean, all I have to do is say to you, great, if you think cholesterol blocks off arteries, would you like to show me a single experimental piece of work that shows that that is so? Because it does not exist. Because it is not so. That is not how the process of atherosclerosis heart disease occurs. At all. Buffoon. Goodness me. Truly amazing, truly incredible, isn't it? Okay, thank you for sharing this time with me. It's been fun, hasn't it? Join me next time when someone will be wrong on the interwebs, and it'll probably be this absolute arse monkey again. See you then.